Hello, friends. Tom here. I just finished reading From the Adventures of Luke Skywalker. This is the official novelization of Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope by Alan Dean Foster, although it was written under the name of George Lucas. This is the first piece of Star Wars media published, I believe, a few months before the movie came out. And I'm going to talk about what I found, what I thought, the differences. There are going to be spoilers for episode 4. If you haven't seen it, I don't know what you're doing on this video. There are much better videos for you to watch. For example, Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope. Do yourself a favor and go see it. But let's get to the book. First thing you notice when you read it is that it's a lot clunkier than the movie. For example, Obi-Wan's line. Uh, who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him? In the book, he says, what does that say of the man who allows himself to be hired by a fool? And this is a pretty consistent issue where the dialogue just doesn't have the same snap to it that you're expecting from the movie. Right? And as I'm reading it, I'm hearing all those classic lines in my head, and then we just get something inferior. It's really disappointing on that front. Um, there are some differences to the typical canon. In this book, well, this actually names Palpatine, which does not happen in the movies, and it sets him up as almost controlled by his advisors. He's definitely evil, but like it almost implies he's sort of powerless to stop whatever's happening in the prologue. So I'm I'm not sure where he was going with that decision, but it's a little bit weird given everything we know that happens after that. And then another change that I like a lot is Biggs gets a lot more screen time. If you don't know who Biggs is, don't worry, they did not go out of their way to explain that in the movie. He is there. He's Luke's friend from Tatooine, and we get brief scene with him and Luke before the Battle of Yavin. Um, and in the movie, it's just confusing. Like, who is this random guy? Why does Luke know him? It feels like he just sort of comes out of nowhere. In the books, he has, there's a bit more build up to him on Tatooine. And I see why they took that out. It does slow things down, but they should have taken him out all the way or kept him in all the way. Like the way the movie has it, it's just like, who's this random guy? It's just not set up very well. But we do get Biggs in the book. He's Luke's friend. He's just graduated the Imperial Academy, and he's coming back to Tatooine to see his friends before he ships out. And he reveals to Luke that he's planning to like take over a star destroyer and join the rebellion, right? So I feel that does set things up better. It adds a bit more context to like what's going on and Luke's feelings about things. Um, yeah, and I'm glad I got to read that part and get that little extra background there. Uh, some changes are less effective. For example, do you remember this guy? Right, in the movie, he's pestering Luke, he's threatening Luke, and Obi-Wan cuts his arm off. In the book, Obi-Wan just murders him. He cuts him in half with his lightsaber and just kills him. And it feels really over the top. Like you did not have to go that far, Ben. And like especially like when later when Lucas edits out, well, edits in, Greedo shooting Han first to make Han look like he's acting in self-defense, but like Obi-Wan just murdered a guy in the original novelization, which I mean I would think would be based on the script before it's edited, right? And it just feels so un-Jedi like, you know? I don't get it. Now, my favorite part of the book is just after Tarkin and the Death Star destroys Alderaan. I want to read a little bit of this paragraph that we get after that. Vader stared at the motley array of stars displayed on the conference room map, while Tarkin and Admiral Motti conferred nearby. Interestingly, the first use of the most powerful destructive machine ever constructed had seemingly had no influence at all on that map, which in itself represented only a tiny fraction of the section of one modest-sized galaxy. It would take a micro breakdown of a portion of this map to reveal a slight reduction in spatial mass caused by the disappearance of Alderaan. Alderaan, with its many cities, farms, factories, and towns, and traitors, Vader reminded himself. So this is from Vader's point of view, right? And we have two full paragraphs talking about how insignificant the destruction of Alderaan is in the grand scheme of things. But if it's really that insignificant, why do we need to spend two full paragraphs talking about it? And in this passage, I read it as Vader trying to rationalize what he's just done. I read it as his conscience screaming at him as he crushes it under his foot and attempts to justify, the unprecedented evil that he's just accomplished with his battle station. Maybe I'm reading too far into this, but that's what jumped out to me, and I like that subtle hint at his character, you know, showing it without saying it. I thought it was really effective. Overall, it's a solid book. If you've seen the movie, there's not a lot of reason to read it. You do get a little bit more Biggs. At the end of the day, Biggs isn't all that significant, and I see why the movie tried to take him out part of the way. If you're really interested in Star Wars history, it's interesting to see the original ideas for the background. It's a little bit different than the sort of legends canon that we're used to. So from that perspective, it's worth a read. But it's there's nothing mind blowing. There's nothing essential. Just there's nothing that you have to read. So overall, I'd say I'd give it a solid 4 out of 9. There's my scale. 4 out of 9. And if you've read it, let me know what you think. And if not, well, it's fine. You don't need to read it. I told you everything that you're missing out on. Next up, I will be reading Splinter of the Mind's Eye, and I will see you then.